Good evening and welcome back. Welcome back to the current affair lectures that we have been doing. For this week, we have taken 5 topics that are very important. One has been making a lot of noise, and that is the Vedanta Foxconn joint venture that have been set up in the state of Gujarat. It has been making noise for 2 reasons. The first one, that now India will be stepping into the domain of chip manufacturing, and the second one is that the state of Maharashtra and state of Gujarat were having some kind of friction in getting the Foxconn and Vedanta joint venture chip manufacturing plant in their own respective states. It is said that prior to being shifted to Gujarat, the plant was being initially set up in Maharashtra, but due to some reasons unknown to us, it has been now shifted to Gujarat. The point being, the Gujarat is a water deficient state, even Maharashtra is a water deficient state, and chip manufacturing is a very water intensive work. Like whenever we want to set up a chip manufacturing industry, it needs intensive amount of water. That is why some people, environmentalists, have also raised some questions over the fact that whether we need to have a chip manufacturing plant in India, or whether we need to set up that plant. If we need to have that plant in India, do we need to set that in a state of Gujarat or Maharashtra, which are already water deficient, right? So that has been a very landmark thing that has happened in the recent times in the field of electronics manufacturing or chip manufacturing. Basically, electronic manufacturing and chip manufacturing are very different things. Like microprocessor, the fundamental level of chip, that is called microprocessor, right? That is being manufactured. That will now be manufactured by Foxconn and Vedanta joint venture. We are already manufacturing PCBs. Printed circuit boards are not chips. Okay? The chips are ICs, basically integrated circuits, which are like very small in size, of length of nanometer, and they consist of billions of transistors within them. They are called chips. Like Intel is one of the manufacturer of chips. Intel microprocessor is a chip. Semiconductor chip. When we talk about chip, it is the very fundamental, by turning the silicon into a semiconductor. That is the basic of chip manufacturing, right? So we have not been able to do that. There are a lot of reasons for that. We'll be looking into them, but still we need to celebrate that our country is going to now set up a chip manufacturing plant in India, and it will be a joint venture between Foxconn. Foxconn basically manufactures Apple or iPhones. Now it has set up a joint venture with Vedanta Group of India, and they are going to manufacture chips in India, right? So let's look. And now the journey of India in chip manufacturing started back in 1976, when India set up its first semiconductor lab, basically semiconductor complex it was called then. Now it is called semiconductor lab. Its first semiconductor lab in Mohali near Chandigarh in Punjab, and from there the research and development of chip manufacturing semiconductor technology started. That facility was later converted into semiconductor laboratory. It is now called semiconductor laboratory. It is under the Ministry of Electronics Information Technology, MEIT, under Government of India. But now we do manufacture chips, but for very strategic purposes, like for ISRO or DRDO or defense equipments, we manufacture those kind of chips. But for commercial production, we do not have the needed capability or technical capability that we need to have. And the ironic thing about this is that India leads the chip design and R&D. India leads in the chip design and R&D, but we do not have even single large-scale commercial manufacturing of chip facility, right? Now that is going to change. And one important thing, that there are very few companies in the world who actually manufacture chip. And we saw that during the COVID, there was a huge chip shortage in the world, and during that time, Government of India formulated a lot of semiconductor related schemes, and this semiconductor PLI scheme is one of them. Now we are going to look into that. So what is the news? Why are we studying this? Because semiconductor PLI support for the project cost, support for 50% of the project cost has been cleared by the cabinet. Okay, cabinet approves the second tranche. Second tranche means the second installment basically under the very scheme. Okay, for PV modules and rupees 19,000, there are two proposals. The first one is for semiconductor electronics, and the second one under the same PLI scheme is for solar photovoltaic modules. Actually, PLI scheme is related with 13 sectors. Okay, one of them is electronic manufacturing, ESDM, electronic semiconductor design and manufacture. Okay, design and manufacture. India leads the world in semiconductor design, R&D sector, but we do not have that manufacturing capability. Now, if you are talking about the chip, and if we do not talk about the major manufacturers of the world and where they are located, we'll be skipping a lot about the economic geography, right? And it is a very strategic sector now. So we need to understand which of the countries or companies manufacture. The largest manufacturer of chip in the whole world is Intel. Actually, 2-3 companies are competing amongst themselves. Actually, the largest manufacturer of chip is TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. It is a company established by an ex employee of Intel itself. It is in Taiwan. Okay, that TSMC is the largest manufacturing of chip in the whole world. After that comes Samsung, then Intel. Now Apple is also starting to manufacture its own chip, like M1 Bionic chip. We have heard of it, right? So now these companies, now why are so few companies interested in chip manufacturing? The major reason behind that is the very high capital cost. Very high capital cost. Samsung actually also is one of the largest manufacturers of chip. It invested around $13.4 billion in setting up of one of its plant. That shows that the initial capital investment and of course the gestation period, because most of the projects with high initial capital investment have longer gestation periods. Gestation period means the time from which it will start paying back. So it is having very high gestation period, due to which companies are not willing, people are not willing. It is very risky business. People are not willing to invest a lot of capital into that because of high gestation period, high capital costs. Okay. And moreover, very important, it needs a lot of water. It needs immense water, which sometimes create environmental problems, and such projects may face clearance difficulties or difficulties from the local population who might face the problem. Okay, and moreover, not only it needs a lot of water, it needs a lot of ultra pure water. Not only the normal water, it needs ultra pure water, right? And ultra pure water is actually, if we have like 16,000 gallons, so we can from that 16,000 gallons we can manufacture only 10,000 gallons of ultra pure water. Ultra pure water is such water which is free from every kind of mineral or every kind of such impurity that might contaminate the chip. Okay, so that we have understood that why India, or why there are so few countries in the whole world which manufacture chip. To improve the electronics manufacturing or chip manufacturing facility or capability in India, now the government is gradually incentivizing manufacturing of semiconductors, electronics, chips in India. And this is one of steps in that direction, right? So recently, Union Cabinet approved modifications in the Production Linked Incentive Scheme, PLI scheme. I have had a very detailed lecture on this. You can look at PLI scheme, Tarun IAS, Amit sir, and you will find that, right? I would advise you that you go through that once. So what is production linked incentive? Production linked incentive means a certain kind of financial or fiscal benefits. Financial benefits are monetary benefits, like directly giving money, and fiscal benefits are benefits in terms of taxation proposals, right? So recently what happened was, Union Cabinet has approved some production linked incentive scheme is a scheme which incentivizes incremental production, right? The incentive that the government will be providing in terms of fiscal incentives like tax benefits and all, those will be provided to the companies who actually produce some incremental output. Like if their volume of production is 10 metric ton and now they are producing 11 metric ton, then government will provide some kind of financial or fiscal benefits on that exceeding 1 metric ton. Like 11 metric ton minus 10 metric ton is 1 metric ton, right? So on that incremental value of production or incremental volume of production, the government is going to provide some kind of financial or fiscal benefits. Now we'll see what changes have been done and what were the earlier provisions that were applicable. It modified the incentives to about $10 billion that the government has announced in December 2021. In 2021, government came up with the PLI scheme, and it said that PLI scheme will be applicable to 13 sectors. Electronic manufacturing is one of them. Right now, fiscal support 50% of project cost on pari passu basis. Pari passu basis means on equal footing basis. Like there are 10 companies, so they will not be given on first come first serve or such kind of thing, but they will be provided on pari passu basis. Means if the 10 billion fund is allocated, each company will be provided with equal footing. Okay. Of course, not like if someone is producing, the point is, it will be, since it is being provided on the incremental output and not on the base output, right? If someone is producing 1 metric ton of like metric ton is not the right unit to calculate such kind of things. So if we say that someone is producing $5 billion worth of electronics, and then they start producing $6 billion worth of electronics, then the government will be providing them incentive on that incremental value of $1 billion, right? So government will try to incentivize that, and it does not matter what your base production was, right? If you are making an incremental change of $1 billion in terms of value, then you will be provided with the same amount of fund that any company which might be having a higher base value of production than you, right? Like if Samsung comes and it has like $100 billion production value, and it says that I have not produced $101 billion dollar production value, so of course the incremental output is only $1 billion. Even the person who has base production of $5 billion, he is producing $6 billion. His incremental production is also $1 billion. That is how pari passu basis is being decided. That is, they will be provided on equal footing, indifferent of their base production value, right? So instead of 30% at present, actually, in the original ESDM scheme, what was the term? The terms of the scheme were that from the funding was like 30% to 50%, depending upon the width of the depending upon the scale of that nanometer chip. For example, 28 nanometer chip, 30%, and for 7 to 8 nanometer chip, the 50% of the production cost. Okay, incremental production cost. But now government had said that actually we do not need to have such kind of chips like 7 to 8 nanometer because these chips are very, very highly advanced, right? So these chips are being manufactured for very smaller strategic purposes, right? And the government believes that it will gradually pick up if we start manufacturing a 28 nanometer. 28 nanometer means nanometer. Nanometer is very small unit. It's the thickness of the chip, right? So 28 nanometer chip is normally being used in mobile phone, laptop, and all these things, right? But 7 to 8 nanometer chips are used in very high speed electronics like supercomputing devices, right? Aircrafts, okay? So such devices which need very high computing capabilities, okay, and very low power consumption. So 28 the government said that we do not need to have that kind of production facility for the first hand. So what we need to actually have is, we need to have commercial production facility or capability of 28 nanometer chip, and that is why we are doing away with the classified like 30 to 50%. No, we are doing away with it, and we are bringing about a uniform 50% fiscal or financial benefits to every kind of semiconductor manufacturing unit on their incremental production value, right? That is how, that is what the change that has been made in the PLI scheme. Now, it is being offered for compound semiconductor. Now, compound semiconductors are like gallium arsenide is a compound semiconductor, right? If someone is producing some compound, like making a semiconductor is one thing. Making some electronic device out of that semiconductor is a completely different thing, right? So, for example, a semiconductor, this one as you can see here is a microchip. Okay, that is a semiconductor. It's a semiconductor wafer, right? And having a different having one transistor made out of that semiconductor is a completely different thing. One transistor, and this chip includes at least 1 billion transistors, right? So these two are very different. I want you to understand. Silicon photonics. Photonics means those things which work on the phenomena of light, like LED. LED is a silicon photonics, or any sensor based on light. That is also IR sensor, for example, is a silicon photonics. Sensor fab, semiconductor, ATMP facilities. ATMP facilities means marking and packaging facilities. Like this one is a packaged semiconductor. The black coating that you see, it is actually not the semiconductor top. Semiconductor has been packed inside it. That chip has been packed inside of it, right? That is why it is called packed semiconductor. Okay. So packing of semiconductor is in itself a technological marvel, engineering marvel, right? So for that also, government is providing up to 50% of the project cost based on pari passu basis, that is on the incremental value of production, right? So I hope you understood what the news is. Let's look at a bit into the Indian semiconductor market. As you can see, some of the major manufacturers in India of semiconductor are Broadcom, NXP, Tata Elxsi, E-Infochips, ChipLogic, SCL. Okay, SCL is the semiconductor laboratory that we were talking about. Now, this is a research, or this is an insight into the Indian market of semiconductor consumption. India is third or second highest consumer of semiconductor electronics in the whole world. Like, we are leading in the smartphone market. So, and this projects that by 2026, India will be having the market value of around $300 billion, right? And out of that, mobile and wearables will be the majority market, around 51%, right? And Indian semiconductor market in 2021 is around 9%, okay, of the total globe, and in around 26 it will be 17% of the total world semiconductor market. That means India is having a great opportunity lying ahead itself in the field of semiconductor manufacturing. This is the very important time for us to get into that manufacturing and to build at least that basic manufacturing capabilities which will be supplying these needs, because semiconductor along with crude oil also forms the part of our greatest fiscal deficit. I'm calling the capital account deficit. Okay. Okay. Now, Indian semiconductor market share it will be growing. It is actually growing at 19% per annum. The growth of Indian semiconductor markets is around 19% per annum. From 2015 to 2020, it was 29.4% CAGR, compounded annually growth rate. Okay. So this shows that India is going to have a lot of opportunity in the field of electronics manufacturing. As I said, why India lacks in semiconductor manufacturing? Of course, because of high capital costs, right? I told you all of these. So you can read this slide if you want. Now let's look a bit about the recent schemes that the government has launched in the ESDM sector. ESDM means Electronic System Design Manufacturing. Electronic Systems Design and Manufacturing. India leads in design, but India lacks in manufacturing. To promote manufacturing in India, government has brought some of the schemes which are going to take up. Like the first one is Modified Electronics Manufacturing Cluster Scheme, that is EMC 2.0. It has been notified for creation of quality infrastructure with common facilities, basically on cluster based approach. Now, what is a cluster based approach? We have seen in many of our lectures what is a cluster based approach. Cluster based approach means if there are some nodes, right? If there are some nodes, and if we connect them with common facility, it becomes a cluster. So what will happen is, in Modified Electronic Manufacturing Scheme, right? Okay. including built factory sheds. Government is actually, what government is going to do is, based on the clusters of manufacturing, like there are some clusters which are leading in the electronic manufacturing. Government is going to provide them with more facilities, like common testing facilities, okay, some factory sheds, plug and play facilities. Plug and play facilities means the businessman or the person who is setting up an electronics manufacturing company or unit, they will have to just enter into that and they will have to execute their idea. That is a well-built facility, right? Under this, financial assistance up to 50% of the project cost to the limit of rupees 70 crore, and scheme outlay is around $500 million. Okay, so I hope you understood this. The second one is scheme for promotion of manufacturing of electronic component and semiconductor. It is specs. Now the aim is to strengthen the value chain. The aim of the first scheme was to create cluster level value systems that produce electronic components, okay, based on their, like it is, the first scheme was utilizing the local capability of the manufacturing units. The second one, on the other hand, is trying to create a value chain in electronic component, semiconductor, fabrication units, etc. The financial incentive is around 25% of the capital expenditure for greenfield and brownfield both projects. Greenfield means the projects which are coming afresh, which are coming new. Brownfield means for existing unit if they want to expand. That is a kind of brownfield project. The outlay is $440 million. That is what you have to remember, and this is what you have to remember, right? Now after that, production linked incentive scheme in semiconductor. This is one of the most important scheme that the government has launched in the recent times, because this scheme is going to put India on the global manufacturing map. It has actually 3-4 components, 3-4 pillars basically. The first one is semiconductor fabs and display fabs. Fab means fabrication. Semiconductor fabrication and display fabrication. Fiscal support will be provided up to 50% of the project cost. Display fabrication is going to be a game changer for Indian semiconductor manufacturing whole ecosystem, because the display fabrication, with the recent advance of new technologies like TUV, like TUV panel, like TFT, and then LCD, LED panels, now curved panels. Now this sector is going to be very much revolutionized. Now we are talking about folding displays. Okay, so this kind of display manufacturing capability needs to be developed, right? After that, compound semiconductor, silicon photonics, sensor, the one we were talking about, right, shall extend capital support up to 30% of capital expenditure. Now this 30% has been extended from 30% to 50%. After that, there is a design linked initiative scheme. Design linked initiative scheme is for product design linked initiative up to 50%, and product development. For example, if someone is developing some new kind of semiconductor product, so for product design, for the research that they will have to do, the 50% of cost will be reimbursed by the government. And then if the project is viable, if the product is viable and it is being launched into the market, then around 4 to 6% of the cost of launching it will be borne by the government. After that, semiconductor laboratory, the one which is located in Mohali, the government wants to modernize it. Actually, once it was the modernization of that specific lab was to happen, but a major fire broke out at that specific lab, and since then it has not been able to recover from the disaster. Okay, and then now you can see the changes that this PLI scheme has brought in India, and this PLI scheme also wants to establish a India Semiconductor Mission. It is actually established within the Ministry of Electronics, okay, and it is an independent business body. It is an independent business body, okay, under the Digital India Corporation. Digital India Corporation is already a company registered within the Ministry of Electronics. Okay, so the PLI scheme in semiconductors has two parts. The first one is the pillars of the semiconductor the scheme. The second one is the Indian Semiconductor Mission. Now let's look at what output has this produced. This scheme was announced in December 2021. After that, India got the proposal worth 1.5 lakh crore for manufacturing of semiconductor display fabs. You can see display fabs. Display fab means display units. Okay, the display units of phones, the display units of laptop, the display units of computers. Okay, so for that India got, and this news is from February 2022. This was launched in December 2021, and in February, like 4-5 months later, 3 months later, we are having 2 months later, we are having 1.5 lakh crore investment proposals, and that is the power of this scheme, because it incentivizes manufacturing a lot. It incentivizes electronic manufacturing, and then Anil Agrawal led Vedanta Group to set up a manufacturing plant in Gujarat. That is the latest news. That is the most hot news about this. I hope you have read this, and even if you did not, I have already told about this. Now, what are the changes into the PLI scheme that we are going to look? The government has approved a uniform support of 50%. Earlier, what was the thing? The funding, fiscal support. This provides fiscal support like taxation support. Financial support is monetary support, right? Direct benefit transfer is a financial support. But fiscal support means that the support that lies in the domain of government taxation. So if someone is going to set up a manufacturing unit, then they will be provided uniform fiscal support of 50%, irrespective of the kind of chip they are going to manufacture. Like earlier, for 45 nanometer to 65 nanometer, it was 30%, 28 to 45 nanometer 40%, and 28 meter and below, it was 50%. As we go on reducing the size of the chip, the production cost of the chip increases. Okay, the production cost of the chip actually exponentially rises, right? But what is the benefit? We have more number of transistors on a very small chip, therefore the power consumption goes slow, and also the reliability, the speed of the chip also increases by a lot. Okay, so I hope you understood this. These are changes that have been made to the PLI scheme. If you have any doubts regarding PLI scheme, if you have any questions about it, kindly ask me in the comment section. I'm going to take them up in the next lecture, and I'll be answering them, right?